have our last speaker of the day. Benjamin is a writer and a poet, a man of many talents, who's published poetry, novels, plays, albums, as well as a few stints acting. He is currently the chair of creative writing at Brunel University in West London. Please could we all welcome Benjamin to the stage.
I've just had the experience of a lifetime. I was in a hotel, and just before I went into the hotel, actually, I did a martial arts class, and I felt a little something in my stomach. And as the night progressed, it just progressively got worse and worse and worse. In the middle of the night, it got so bad. I mean, I couldn't stand, I couldn't lie, I couldn't sit, I couldn't do anything. And I thought, let me persevere with it, because I had to do a lecture the next day. And so I just did that throughout the night, tried to bear it, tried to sleep. It just wasn't working. And I think it was about 6 o'clock in the morning. I just couldn't take it anymore. So I rang the reception. They had a kind of local doctor that came in and saw me and went, "You've got to get to hospital now." So they took me to hospital. And they wasn't sure what it was. But I must tell you, I mean, I really thought I was going to die. It was so painful. And took me to hospital, and they said they wasn't sure what it is. It sounded like, or it felt like appendicitis. And apparently, appendicitis is less common in vegetarians and vegans, and I'm a vegan, and it's less common in older people, and I'm almost 100. So they were a little bit, they were searching around, and they said, "Well, look, we're going to have to operate." And I was like, "Have you ever heard of the October Gallery?" I got places to go. And they said basically they just had to operate there and then. Say there and then, it took them a bit of time to get it together. Fortunately, it was, they had a couple of theories. And the first theory was that it was appendicitis, which would be easy. They would just use some keyhole surgery and just deal with it. If it was theory 2 and 3, I can't remember what they were going to really cut me open. And so I went to the operating theatre, and fortunately it was appendicitis, so I just had a couple of holes. And today they said I may be able to make it here, but I've got to see the doctor first. I thought I'd be seeing the doctor about 10 o'clock or so. As it happened, the doctor wasn't coming until like 5 o'clock this evening. It's nice to have friends in high places, because the doctor actually was somebody that had just finished reading one of my novels. She happens to be Ethiopian, and she just read a novel I wrote called Refugee Boy, about a refugee from Eritrea and Ethiopia. And so she kind of came up and she said, "Well, look, we're just worried that certain things go wrong, so what you need to do, we need to see you eat, we need to see you walking, and then we need you to go to the toilet." So I ate something, and I walked around a bit. She kept saying, And in fact, when she first said it, she said, "You've got to do a motion." Now I thought that had to do something with dancing. Emotion. So she kept saying, "Have you done a motion yet?" I'm doing motions all the time. I got ridden. And then she's a really nice doctor. She said, "Have you shit?" Right? And I thought, she said, "You're shit." What did you say that for? You didn't like the novel or something? And she said, no, have you been to the toilet? And I said, "Yes." I gotta confess, I kind of lied. But I did afterwards. And so she said, "Okay, we're going to get you out." And they did a lot. I mean, I always get emotional when I talk about how much I love the National Health Service. I mean, the Americans see it as communism or something, you know. The fact that I could just collapse in my hotel room and get picked up so easily and get treated so well. The last time I was in hospital was in China. When you went in the door, you had to pay the doorkeeper. When you went to the reception, you had to pay the receptionist. When somebody came and saw you, then you had to pay that person. And then it was big money when the doctor came. You know. Plus, I had to literally there and then sign up to the Chinese kind of health service, and that costs money as well. Anyway, they said I can come and talk here. The fascinating thing was they really didn't want me to come out. They thought I was going to be doing a concert or a talk, and they thought I was lying as if I would. One of them went on the internet and saw that it was happening. And they were so pleased, you know, it was about women and like yeah, go, we're going to fix it for you. They did all the stuff. And, you know, they asked me, and I wanted to do it anyway, they asked me to do something for them. And I was saying that I really don't know how to lead into it. So I'm just going to ask you to do it because it will make me feel better and it will connect with them. But I really want to give them a round of applause because they really did so much. They really did do some very, very special stuff for me. And I actually cried when I was there. This is kind of unusual for me. I'm going to, when I saw this bit of artwork here, gosh, I really am going to cry. Because what happened today, or what happened the last couple of days, also connects to this person. This is my mother. And when I saw that, I kept thinking about struggle. I kept thinking about feminism. I kept thinking about the things that women have fought for throughout the ages. And I said, you know what? It's not really my area of expertise. I don't like to call myself a feminist. And there have been a couple of occasions where people have said, you know, where did you study and all this kind of thing. And I thought that I'd tell you if I can be called a feminist, and I really don't know. It doesn't matter to me really. To me it's about the experience. So I bought this photograph here to just show you what my mother was like when she came to this country. I did something else actually, which is quite amazing. And I didn't see this till a couple of days ago. I've got a passport. And you can't see it from there. It's an amazing, the blurb on the front is amazing. It's like the ambassador wrote it personally. The photograph, you see the security on the photograph now. This is just a photograph that they take from a booth and just blue tacked it in. But, you know, I want to talk about her because obviously she means a lot to me. But her struggle was the struggle that kind of inspired me, even though along the way, you know, I went really wrong, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. I've only got 15 minutes, so I'm going to try and keep it. I probably won't do it, but I'm going to try and keep it to the 15 minutes as much as possible. My mother was walking down the road with her sister in Jamaica one day, and she saw a poster on the street saying, "Come to Britain where the streets are paved with gold. There is work. This is the mother country," etc. I'm sure you've seen those posters or heard of them. My mother was with her sister, and she said to her sister, "Do you fancy going?" Oh, she didn't say that. She said, "You want to make a trip?" and my auntie went, "No way. Do you know how cold that place is? No way am I leaving this country and going there." My mother went to her uncle and told her uncle that she'd seen this poster and that she wouldn't mind going. And my uncle, her uncle, said, "Okay, I will give you the money." She told me how much it was the other day, and it was something ridiculous, like £30 or something. You know. And so she got the money, she paid, and she came over in 1957. So this, you can see it later, because like I said, it's really small. This is her, like, in 1957. I think this is her a couple of years afterwards. she came over and she did all the stereotypical things that black people did when they got here. They thought there's loads of work because there were so many factories. When they saw chimneys, they thought chimneys were factories. So every house was a factory. She looked up at the sun and went, the sun bright, but it's still cold. How did they do that? And she made her way to Sheffield first. And what she really wanted to do was nursing, but she, for the first couple of weeks, she worked as a cleaner. And then somebody in Sheffield said, why don't you go to Birmingham? I think I can fix you up with a job in nursing if you get the training, of course. And that's what she did. She went to Birmingham. We lived in a place called Aston. That's where I was born. Anybody here from Aston?
No, but I know it.
No, but I know it. Who said that? I don't know what to say to that. Do you know Aston Villa?
Yeah.
Alright, I won't say anything then. I actually lived in the house where if you went through my back garden and climbed over the fence, you went into the garden of Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah. I remember them when the kids were a really naughty family. But my mother, I've got to tell you, she was what they used to call back then a state-registered nurse. She did a course in nursing. She got on to become a state-registered nurse. And she had this thing, you know, moving to Britain was like moving up the social ladder for her. So not only did she move to Britain, but there we were living in Aston, Handsworth. And you've got to excuse me, I'm really dry, I've been taking lots of drugs today and I'm slightly lightheaded. And if I sit down, that's why I've got the chair here. You know, it's sitting down I think is better than collapsing, so bear with me. She had this thing all the time about moving up the social ladder. So although we lived in Aston, Handsworth, she had contacts in the National Health Service. So she arranged for me to be born in a place called Coles Hill, Marston Green, which is like uptown Birmingham, posh Birmingham, you know. It's a place where, certainly back then, black people just didn't go. I revisited it a few times, but maybe I shouldn't. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you that one revisit I did. Some of you may know that I got in trouble with the police when I was younger, right? And I guess I can be open here and talk about it. Well, I used to love going to Marston Green to steal cars because they just had such nice cars. One day, me and a couple of friends stole a white Rolls Royce. Could you imagine? It's like 3 Rastas in a white Rolls Royce. And this was like 1974 or something like that, right? And it was so cool. It actually had a record player in it. Some of you won't even remember what a record player is. It had a record player in it. And I don't understand young people now, because they get a car they like, they burn it out. You know, they run it to the ground, and then they literally set it alight afterwards. And we would never do that. If we nicked a car that we like, we would drive it nice and cool, and then put it back, you know what I mean? We may want to revisit it. I remember on this occasion we put this car back, and we took a few goodies out of it to make some money, and we were selling them in a second-hand shop the next day. And they were just like bits and pieces, and we sold them, but the guy wouldn't take the records off us. We had some Beethoven and stuff to sell. And we were followed out the shop by a man who said, I'm interested in buying these records off you. So we said, yeah, that's cool. He said, how much do you want for that one? You know, and I said, well, give me 10 shillings. Nobody here remembers shillings, do you? Whatever. And we did a bargain, and then he just turned around and said, I'm a police officer. And my heart sank. And he turned around to me and said, what's your name, young man? I said, Bob Marley. He goes to my friend and says, what's your name? What's your name? Bonnie Wheeler. My name is Bonnie Wheeler. And the copper, you know, before like mass computerisation, he's actually taking this nonsense. Bob Marley. Got a conditional discharge. kind of worth it. But yeah, that was the kind of place Marston Green was. I was a twin. I got a twin sister. My mother at the time was actually a maternity nurse. My mother claimed, I don't know how true this is, but she says, I wouldn't tell a lie, I swear upon the Holy Bible. So she claimed that she delivered Lenny Henry in Dudley Road Hospital. It's interesting, she can remember his birthday, but she can't remember mine. Now, I am quite unusual in that I really don't know my birthday. It's either the 15th of March or the 15th of April. We've always said the 15th of March, but one day the passport people sent me my passport back and all the documents we met and said, this is wrong, you were born in April. And we said, no, I'm born in March. April, March. So they said, right, let's go back to the papers and see the papers. Some of them, some of these papers are countersigned, right? By witnesses, etc. Some of them say March, some of them say April. So I really not. I mean, I say I'm like the Queen. I got like my official birthday, which is the 15th of April, and my personal birthday, which is the 15th of March. I remember when, after the government were bugging me and saying, you've got to tell us, bring us evidence of the day you were born. I went to my mother, I said, Mum, come on. Now, I was a very difficult birth. Although I was a twin, I was born in the corridor on the way to the theatre. And I said, Mum, come on, you must know when I was born. And she said, hey, boy, you know how difficult it was giving birth to you? Huh? You think I was looking at the calendar? So, I forgive her, But we went from there. For some strange reason, my mother thought it was moving up the social ladder to arrange for me to go to a school, primary school. I think it was actually infant and primary school. That it was all white. So me and my twin sister were the only black kids in the school. And it was a very, very difficult time. The teachers were kind of openly racist in a general way. I mean, I don't think any of them came out and said, we hate black people. But on our arrival at school, this is the way the kids celebrated our arrival at that school, by bringing in or painting their favourite gollywog. And we were supposed to feel really good about that. And then there were other things. I remember standing in front of a teacher, sitting in assembly, and they used to do this thing where the teacher would say, good morning, school, and the school would answer back, good morning, Mrs. Evans, good morning, everyone. And one day, Mrs. Evans said, we have good news for you, we're going to have a cricket team. And it gets better, we have a captain for our cricket team. Little coloured Benjamin here is going to be our captain. And I'm sitting there and I'm doing what you're doing. And I go to the teacher afterwards and I said, look, I don't really like cricket. I find it like really slow and it reminds me of colonialism. And said I was a born cricketer. Anyway, they forced me to play cricket. A born cricketer. Forced me to play cricket. And on the first ball, I actually broke my finger. So, one of my favourite writers of all times is C.L.R. James. He wrote a lot of political essays and books. But for some reason, he wrote one book, and people say it's the definitive book on cricket. And I've read it, and I still don't get it. When I think of cricket, I think of some form of child abuse, personally. But that's personal experience, and I said this is about personal experience. My mother moved us out of me and my sister when she realised we wasn't having a good time there. And I wanted to say something, that if you listen to a playground, especially a primary school playground, it really is a place of joy. You can hear it from in the distance. You can hear kids enjoying themselves, whatever it is they're doing. They are having a great time. And I think if you are in a playground and you are on your own and nobody wants to talk to you, it's the loneliest place in the world. It really is the loneliest place in the world. And I remember being in that lonely place when Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, he was going around the world and beating people up legally. And he won a fight, and I went to school the next day, and all these kids came up to me and said, "Come on, Cassius, come on," and beat me up. Thinking that I could fight like Muhammad Ali because I was black. The truth of the matter is I can actually fight like Muhammad Ali, but not like 10 against 1, it doesn't work out. My mother moved me from there to another school, which was great. Very mixed, very creative. I was always doing poetry. I loved poetry. I didn't call it poetry at the time, I called it playing with words. And in assembly sometimes the teacher would say, "Little Benjamin, you want to come up and do your stuff?" And I would come up and I would do my thing, and they used to have a thing called kiss chase. Remember that? Yeah. You said, "Yeah." You again. You're still doing it, aren't you? Kiss chase. Well, I love sport, but I was a bit lazy sometimes. I didn't play kiss chase. I'd go up to a girl and I'd say to her, "What's your name?" And I'd just make up a poem. So you say, "My name is Lana." I said, "Yes, Sister Lana, meet me around the corner, I'll love it really hard." She'd go, "I want you." But I really opened up as a poet. And but something happened at that time, as I was really enjoying that. Sorry, can I be really rude and ask for some more water? Oh, there's loads. Thank you. I realised something was going on with my mother and father. Sometimes they would sit together and not talk. Sometimes they would send us to bed early for one reason or another. And then one night, for some reason, I woke up and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I came downstairs and there was a frying pan on the floor and my mother was crying. And I said to my mother, "What's the matter? Why are you upset?" As a kid, you think you cry because you didn't get your sweets or something, So I'd never seen my mother cry. So I said, "What's the matter, Mum? Do you want me to get something for you? Did I say something wrong?" And she said, "Your father just hit me with the frying pan." And I remember looking at my dad and he just went, "Get to bed, boy." And so there's they say sometimes with art, with music, with objects sometimes, they can trigger things in your imagination. This doesn't happen very often, but if I see a frying pan on the floor, obviously they don't end up on the floor very often, but every now and again, I see people camping or whatever, if I see a frying pan on the floor, it takes me right back to that time. I can remember that night so well. It's like one of the first strong memories that I had. Because I remember just trying to work it out. Why would Dad hit Mum with a frying pan? Why would he hit her at all? Many years after, I wrote a play for Radio 4 called Listen to Your Parents. I don't know if anybody heard it. It was a few years ago. It's about a boy who's in Birmingham having to listen to his parents, his father beating his mum night after night. And he's talking to you, the radio listener, trying to block it out. And at the time, the BBC kept, when we do the publicity, they kept saying to me, "Is this your life story? Do you want to tell them it's your life story? Because it'll be, And actually, it wasn't my life story. It didn't happen to me like that. But that bit about listening to my parents was true. And trying to block it out. And there's a little moment in that play, and word for word is what happened to me. I went to a boy called Robert, and I remember him well because he was an Irish Catholic. And when I was getting my racism, he said that me and you should stick together because, they pick on me too. And I went, "No, pick on you because you're white." He went, "But I'm Catholic." "So, you're Christian, you're white." And at the time I didn't get it, but we became friends. But I remember going to him and saying, "Robert, man, what do you do when your dad hits your mum?" And he went, "My dad doesn't hit my mum." And I said to him, this is word for word as it is in the play, I said, "Oh, like you got one of them back to front houses, you're like your mum's a freedom fighter. So what do you do when your mum hits your dad? You know? And he said, my mum does not hit my dad. You know, there's no fighting in our house. And then it dawned on me that, I mean, it did before, but then I realised that probably there's something about when you're a kid, you think that it's happening everywhere, so, you know, you can kind of accept it, because if this happens, if everybody lives in violent houses, well, that's just the way it is. If everybody's rich, that's the way it is. If everybody's poor, that's the way it is. But when I realised that it doesn't have to be that way, I started to question a lot of things. I'm trying to cut a very long story short. The beatings just continued and continued. There are 9 of us in our family. I'm a twin. I've got a twin sister. There are another set of twins, 2 boys. And then there's the rest of them. Anytime my father, he started actually doing it in the open now, having confidence, beating my mother in the open. Anytime he would start, my other brothers and sisters would run away, but I would run and fight my father. And my mother left home. We lived in like rented rooms. You know, you rent a room, you get a paraffin heater, and you know, 1 bed sometimes, and we just sleep on it. Sometimes I may get a single bed. But it was really, really very basic living. I reminded my mum of this the other day because she. Sorry, it seems like I'm going off here on a different subject, but bear with me. Because, you know, it's all about experience, but I really reminded my mother of this. She rang me in the middle of the night and she says, Benjamin. And she's whispering, you know, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, she's whispering, she goes, Benjamin, they're coming. I go, who's coming? I thought she had burglars or something. She said, they're coming to get us. Who's coming to get your mom? The Muslims. The Muslims are coming. I said, Mum, what have you been doing? She said, I've been listening to Radio 5 Live. And they said the Muslims are coming. And there's evidence of this. She got a Muslim neighbour on one side, and a couple of days beforehand, the Muslim neighbour moved on the other side. So, and she's listening to 5 Live late in the night, and she really believes. And I said, Mother, think about it. When you were down and out, when you were being beaten by father, it was a Muslim woman that took you in and looked after, at one point, took her in and looked after her. It kind of upset me in a way because it was, you know, she just is beginning to believe all this stuff because she reads the Sun, she loves the Sun, you know. She tried to convince me the other day that the Sun is not racist because sometimes there are black people in it. But I'm telling you all this because, you know, it doesn't end up that my mum turns out to be a feminist or anything. You know, I've alluded to the way she turns out. But the struggle that we had to, the struggle against our father that we had to wage was amazing. Mother would take me shopping. My job was to hold my mother's hand as my mother was looking at the apples or whatever and look like this for father. I had a picture of my father in there. It's like a wanted poster. And I would look for him. And on a couple of occasions we had to run. On one occasion, the first time I ever went into a police station, it was because I stabbed my father. My mother was walking down the street. My father, I've got to tell you, my father worked for the GPO, General Post Office it was called then. And because he worked for the GPO, he could connect with people in the National Health Service, in the dole office and things like that. And any time my mum tried to claim child benefits, my father would know. You know, that's how free that information moved between the men of these institutions. So my mother had to either starve or, you know, just try and sign on for a couple of days and then move on. So anyway, we're walking down the road, my father jumps on my mother. He's got my mother down, he's beating her. I had a little penknife in my pocket. I don't know if anybody here, I sound really old because I keep going on about the old time, but I used to be able to buy these penknives for 6pence. Little pretty things they were, they'd have little patterns on them. And I got on top of my father, and I remember watching a programme on television that said that if you cut somebody here or hit them hard enough, they die. And I'm trying to stab my father there. This penknife is useless, it's folding back on me and cutting me, like rip my hand apart. But the police come and they arrested me, and in the end, of course, they let me go. They had to let me go when they knew what had happened. My mother reminded me the other day of another instance where she was walking down the road, me and her were walking down the road, and our father came up behind us. This was in Edgbaston in Birmingham, and he grabbed my mother and started to beat her, and my mother said, "Look, it's okay, I'm coming home, you know," just to kind of make peace with him. "It's all right, darling, I really do love you, yeah." He said, come home, yeah, I'm coming home. And she kind of put her arm around him and began to walk with him. And I remember thinking, this is odd, because usually we should run, you know, and my mum's being really nice to him. And she's saying silly things to him like, "So how are you nowadays, you know, how's your cough?" And as she's walking with him, she turns into this, I thought it was a shop doorway, this building, and it was the police station. And the police jumped out and grabbed my father. And I almost forgot that. My mum reminded me of it the other day to show you how smart she was. But they were very, very difficult times. I could tell you lots of stories about lots of beatings, and it would just get heavier and heavier. But I realise my time's limited. But what I want to say is probably even worse than just what happened before, in one sense. See, when I started dating girls, I had one girlfriend in particular that I had for a long time, and I started beating her. You know? I'm going to tell you how bad it is, or how bad it was. You know, if I don't start crying again. But you know, one day, she was an American Indian, had really beautiful long hair. And one day, I slammed her hair in a car door and dragged her down the road. That's the kind of person I was. And I remember when I used to hit my girlfriends, I used to do it in the way that my dad would do it. He had this way of doing it where he would talk, and it sounds a crazy thing to say, almost poetically with a rhythm kind of thing. He would say, "All right, I tell you not to do this, bang, but you go and do that, bang, I tell you, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, bang, and da-da-da-da-da-da, bang, da-da-da-da-da-da, bang." And I started to do it. You know, somebody who should know better. But the problem was, there was other men around me, and young men around me, doing the same thing. As a young man, I just said I had a girlfriend. As a young man, I didn't say I had a girlfriend. I would say I'm controlling a woman. My brethren would come up to me and say, "Yeah, are you control that woman?" That was the language we used. And at the same time, you know, I'm starting to write this poetry. I'm starting to do things on sound systems, toasting, MCing, whatever you want to call it. And getting to make a little bit of a name for myself, because a lot of the toasters in Birmingham were toasting about Jamaica, which is all cool. But I started toasting about Handsworth and what was going on in Birmingham. And one day, in the 70s, you had power cuts sometimes. There was a power cut, and everybody was going to leave the blues dance. And I said, no, stay. And I just did my MCing just as poetry, with talk in between it. And as I said, started to make a bit of a name for myself. And then the National Front came on the scene. You remember the National Front? The kind of forerunners of the BNP. I think they're still around. But skinhead fogs who used to come outside dances and beat you up, or follow you home and beat you up. And I remember once being on a demonstration, you know, and I think it was against racism and for freeing South Africa and stuff like this. And I remember there chanting, you know, "Free South Africa, free South Africa." And getting really kind of passionate about the cause that we were talking about. And literally, I just stopped in the road and went, what am I talking about? I just left the home. I just left the girlfriend in the house. And I told her not to leave the house. Because if she leaves the house and I come back, I'm going to beat her. And I'm not giving her freedom. And here I am in this demonstration, everybody going, how cool you are, Benjamin, saying free South Africa. And in one go, I just saw my own hypocrisy. So I was kind of nervous about coming here because I don't know theories about feminism or anything like that. I haven't read a lot of the great feminist writers. I've read some of them. I'm friends with some of them, fortunately. I've managed to meet some great people in my time. But everything that I am comes from experience. And I always find that wherever I am, and I go into prisons or anywhere, now I talk to men who beat women. And something happens because I'm not somebody that studied domestic violence. I'm not putting that down. I don't even like the word domestic violence, actually. Because there's someone standing in front of them that actually witnessed his mother being beaten and then went on to beat other women. A lot of people who are beating women find that experience, find that when I talk to them, well, they will listen because it's not coming from an academic. They don't say, what did the figures say about this, or what was, they say, what did you feel at the time? What was going through your head? And a friend of mine, well, this same girl who I dragged down the road once, and I really don't know how to deal with this. And as a man, I'm not sure if I'm qualified to even try and answer the question, but it runs round in my head. The same girl whose hair I caught in the door, locked in the door and dragged down the road in a car. I saw her not so long ago. And took her for dinner. And she knew me when I was just young, when I was talking about doing my poetry and what I wanted to do and just doing a bit of MC. And so I took her for dinner and I said to her, that stuff I used to do to you, I'm really, really sorry. I don't know how to apologise for, what I've done. And she turned around to me and she said, I liked you better then. You are much more of a man then. You're a wimp now. You've been hanging out with too many white people and talking to too many feminists. Seriously, that's what she said to me. And I just didn't know how to deal with it. I just started to talk about non-violence and nobody should hit anybody, and even hitting children is bad, so hitting a woman is... And she was saying, but sometimes women need to be put in their place. And when a man who's gone through what I've gone through is sitting in front of a woman saying that to him, it's fortunately I'm strong enough to know that she's wrong. Even if she's a woman, she's wrong. So excuse me, I really am drying up. It's interesting, I think this is the first time it's happened to me. I'm so dry here and I'm so wet here. I just want to say something before I go, because I'm going to finish now. This is my mother. This is her passport. It's only got one stamp in it. From Jamaica to England. I did actually take her back to Jamaica. I'll tell you, sorry, am I going too long? I did actually take her back to Jamaica. My mother, as I said, was raised by her grandmother and her uncle. She didn't know her mother that well. Now, I'm going backward and forward to Jamaica all the time. So I decided to give my mother a treat. I said, right, Mum, I'm going to fly you. She hates planes. But she never flew on a plane. She came by boat. So I'm going to fly you first class to Jamaica. You're going to meet your family and all that stuff. I took her to Jamaica. And I was touring in the States at the time, and I came to a deal with the promoter. Sorry. I came to a deal with the promoter that said I would commute from Jamaica. So I took her to Jamaica, and I had to introduce my mother to her mother. And they were so formal. They just stood there, how do you do? Because my mother didn't really know her mother. She knew her uncle better, and even her grandmother, who wasn't alive. I went to Texas or somewhere, did some gigs. I came back to Jamaica. My mother was supposed to stay for about 6 months. She's standing there at the airport with her arms folded. Take me out to this God-forsaken place. She hated it. She said, the sun too hot. The buses don't run on time. And the mosquitoes have no respect. And I had to reason with her and convince her, because I thought it would be the last time. And I was right before my grandmother died. I said, Mum, just stay, just bear it out. And fortunately, she did. Anyway, so yeah, there's my mum, and here's my mum. And I love my mother, and my mother loves me. We come so far from over the sea. We heard that the streets were paved with gold. Sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold. I love my mother, and my mother loves me. We try to live in harmony. Well, you can call her Valerie, but to me she is my mummy. She shouts at me that it's so low sometimes, but she's always been a friend of mine. She's always doing the best she can. She works so hard down in England. She's always singing some kind of song. She has big muscles and she's very, very strong. She likes pussycats and she loves cashew nuts and she don't bother with no ifs and buts. I love my mother loves me. We come so far from over the sea. We heard that the streets were paved with gold. Sometimes it's hot, most times it's cold. I love her. And whatever we do, this is a love I know is true. My friends, I am talking to you. Me and my mother, we love you too. Thank you very much.
Another 15 minutes and then we'll have all of our speakers back to answer your questions and have a discussion, and then some live music by the UYA. So help yourself to drinks, get some fresh air because it's hot, and then we'll come back in. The start-off question that we wanted to ask you all was whether you thought having a Women's History Month in 2012 was a relevant thing to do. Do you think it's relevant? Do you think it's needed? Let's throw that to you guys.
We have a Black History Month, and I think that we need it. I would like to do away with it. I wish there was no need for it. But it seems to me that there's so many issues around women that just have not been resolved yet. And just in some way, I think almost going backwards in some issues. So I think now, I think if it just focuses people for a short while, but I don't like them. I don't like these Black History Months, and every Black History Month I get overloaded with work, And then you try, and I get this from teachers and people like that, or people who try to do things in school. They say, I tried to do something on March about Black history, and they said, oh, don't worry, we'll do it in October. So everything gets shoved to that month. And so I think in terms of raising awareness, but I think it's sad that we need it now. I'm not a historian, but I think women have been around as long as men.
I think as a trans person, we have what's known on the 20th of November every year is Trans Day Remembrance. And I'm not sure if you're aware of the Trans Day Remembrance. It's every November 20th. But it's to commemorate the amount of trans people that are literally killed. Yeah, and that's not just over there, it's here as well in the UK. Yeah, of trans people that are killed simply for being trans. And the percentage is high, whether it's male trans or female trans people. So we have that. We don't actually have like a month to celebrate that, but it's part of the LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual and trans history month. And again, I think anything that draws attention to a problem, because it is a problem, it's not a problem with the people, is important. And I think sometimes we can forget these things. We have a Women's History Month, but there's still certain fractions of the female community that are not even recognised as being female. And the way that we are pushed out of society and just made to just accept things. I think it's important that we have a month where we can gather and talk about our frustrations and work throughout the year. I think there's a danger sometimes when we say, well, we don't need, this is my opinion, I'm not getting at anybody, but when we say we don't really need this or we don't need that, we have a saying in Jamaica, was it chicken Mary pork dinner? Yeah. Well, sometimes you think everything is okay, but that pork is certainly ready to do something. Yeah, so I think it's important that we have events like this, and not just about women, not just about trans people, about every community. There's more strength in numbers. I think all of us have that right to convene those who need it. Not everyone needs it, but some of us do. And I think it's a good thing. That's in my opinion.
Would anyone in the audience like to ask a question to any of our speakers, or a general question or comment?
Yes. Just a show of hands, how many people have met a trans person? Wow, quite a lot. Yeah, cool.
Do research.
Anyone else? Comment or question? Okay.
My question could be applied to most people on the panel. I'm wondering whether or not to be successful as a politician or as an artist or as a musician or as an activist, you have to be masculinised, whether or not you need to take on the more male traits. We're all aware of Mrs. Thatcher's sorry. We're all aware of the sort of masculine woman archetype, and also the kind of the masculine female artist, and whether or not there's a need for people to do that in order to get attention. That's my question.
I'm wondering whether it's a question more about whether the structures in which we're looking for success stem from a male point of view, and so being within them, it's inevitable that you're in reference to that set of criteria.
Everyone's so polite. I think I was just thinking about, when I was researching for this talk, just thinking about the role postmodernism has to play in the kind of breakdown of categories of which could be applied to the thought of masculine and feminine. And because it's all, I found it really difficult when I was thinking about it to actually ascertain what those things meant, like now kind of thing, and if they still got meaning to them. And actually maybe those two things need to become separated again to become equal and to be validated again as separate things. I don't know, so that we can then see the value in what they represent. To be able, yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean? Because it's got all
Male and female?
yeah. Or masculine and feminine.
Masculine and feminine. Well, but doesn't that just put people back into like, you're making female, it's okay, don't worry about it, you're making female work because you're a female artist. You know, yesterday Chloe and I were making a piece of work in central London and Chloe had a hula hoop. Not them. Not this, the the things that go around your waist. And we were talking about whether it was a blue hula hoop, but it was obviously stood for like this female, or it was, we were discussing how potentially it was a female object and why that was, and whether that was broken down into the fact that you use your hips, you know, use your hips to do it, it's a playful thing, and what breaks down that, which then after we left that conversation I got angry about, because in terms of breaking masculine and feminine up, it just, for me, it seems to pull out things that I automatically think have negative connotations with being a woman, which I find really difficult. But that's also maybe because I'm trying to figure out my own place within that woman.
I'll be very quick. So I just want to say something. I'm really glad I've been invited to be able to sit on the panel and so forth. I think it's really cool. Thank you. But I'm fed up of hearing masculine and feminine. You know, we exist as well, trans people. You know, and I think in everywhere that I go, in every sphere, every society or group of people, all I ever hear about is masculine and feminine. I never hear about trans people. And I think when I was doing the talk as well, I was trying to like allude to that when mixing the pink and the blue and coming out with the purple. That's what I was trying to say. Because everything, application forms, jobs, everything is masculine and feminine. But within the human race, yeah, it's more diverse than masculine and feminine. And I think until we start to accept that and open up, you're not going to get equality. It's always going to be the I don't like to say it, but it's true. You're always going to have that white male at the top of the chain, and everybody else is fighting to get somewhere. But we need to I think we need to do away with all that stuff first.
Just a quick thing, just about the phrasing of your question about the taking on of masculine attributes in order to try and get a head or a foot in the door or whatever. I mean, for me, I'm not going to try and answer that question necessarily, but I am very tall and I possess what is commonly probably thought of as a masculine attribute, but it's probably the thing as a woman that gets in my way 80% of the time when I'm working as an actor, so I don't know if I've really talked about taking on, attributes, but and I think that also relates to what you were saying about the parameters in which you're working, maybe being more masculine or feminine driven. I know that usually if I write a story with a woman at the centre, it takes a long time to get it noticed, and so sometimes I practice and try and get some attention with some more male driven material, and that usually works. and then I take the work back.
Just responding to the last two comments, and also your talk earlier when you were talking about the kinds of scripts that don't get funded, and maybe it is about us as women listening to different communities, different voices, the trans community, and redirecting our focus. Okay, maybe the funding bodies aren't interested, but all of us are, and I think mainstream culture maybe doesn't create the spaces for hearing those kinds of voices, but actually it's up to us to make those spaces and to listen and point out ears in the right direction.
Because I came here late, I didn't really hear the other speakers, and I really liked it with that because I don't really have a script myself, I just kind of feel the room and I just talk. So I don't know if this was brought up, I had a feeling it was brought up, this thing about colours. Every now and again you have an idea about something, and then something just kind of blows it out of the water. And it's about what girls like in pink and boys like in blue, you know. They even tried it with apes, and the female apes like pink and like blue, and the male like the blue. And even when they left them with games and stuff to do, it's really bizarre. I don't know how you work it out. I'm not making statements about it, but it's just amazing. But what I want to say in direct answer to the question is that men have really fucked up the world. I don't know why there's not a lot more anger. I mean, really, really messed it up. I study a martial art. It's called Wing Chun, or in Chinese, Yung Chun. It's invented by a woman, and she named it after the first student. We learn how to control our bodies and overcome obstacles by actually being soft. One of the big problems we have with men when they come and do it is that they think power comes from here. We don't punch like that. Our punches are about 4 or 5 inches long, so we can throw you across the room. It's about the way you structure your body and the way you generate power. So it's not like men tend to think, right, might is right, I've got a big muscle here, and I come round there. A Wing Chun person goes, you are creating a circle, we will not meet force with force. If you come with force, we let it go. And I think one of the problems with the way men think about politics all over the world, and Thatcher and some other women who basically take up a mannish stance, is that it's all about power. It's not really about helping the people and all the other things that we really care about. One of my favourite sayings of all time, and you really have to understand this, some people here who are multilingual will know that in some languages, peace is not just a word that means I'm not doing anything. Look at people who've won the Nobel Peace Prize lately. Some of them have got it because they've been fighting, then they've stopped fighting. And they get Nobel Peace Prize. And there are some people, and I'm sure some of you know them, on the grassroots level, be that in Tottenham or Bristol or Andover, been working for peace all their life. And you know they're never going to get a Nobel Peace Prize. Because men tend to think that peace is an absence of war. So you have George W. Bush saying, we will fight our way to peace. You have people saying, this is the war to end all wars. There is absolutely no way to peace. Peace is the way. And people really find it hard to understand. Peace is the way. It's not a target, because you can keep going for the target. And people who agree with you keep saying, yeah, keep fighting those Afghanistan people, you know. If eventually we'll get peace, and then they cause a truce, and then they move on to another country, etc., etc. But when peace is in the way you approach things, peace as a verb, as a doing word, you look at politics completely different. Yeah. There was one island that I can't remember where it was. We just woke up one day and said, we're going to get rid of our army. Just got rid of the army. We're not planning to fight anybody. We're not planning to hurt anybody. We pay them so much. You know, in Britain, I think the price of one soldier is the price of 6 teachers. That's when they're doing nothing. And the more you go into the developing world, it's even more. So, that is why me, born a Christian, inspired by Rastafarianism, studied martial arts and meditation, and probably more inspired by Buddhism, is actually an anarchist. Because I believe that if you educate people and you inspire people and you give them real control of their lives, then people will do it. Of course, there's going to be exceptions, and we've got to do things to do. But on the whole, I just think people just don't trust in themselves enough. And for a lot of people sitting here now, they might go, anarchism. First of all, they go, isn't that crazy right? And then secondly, if they really understand what it is, they go, well, we've gone too far now, because we've got these borders, and we've got this. You've got to have faith in yourself. We as a people, men and women, should have faith in ourselves. And then we'll end up with something that is not masculine or feminine. You know, it's the way we are. So it's not talking too much.
Yeah, I just wondered whether we should have also invited a Jewish artist to counter Charlotte's Gaza work as well, because then you'd show that women and sisters can work together on opposing sides, both in the domestic place and on political forums.
But you could have
that's what I mean.
But you could have a Jewish person who is
not
the state of Israel.
No, I know, that's what I'm throwing out. The Jews in Palestine are in the Gaza Strip. I've visited Israel, and I know.
I just wanted to say something. I'm always doing that now. I just want to say that, I'm going to say something. When you was introducing me, I remember at the beginning, one of the girls that comes to my group, and she was saying to me, so I just wanted to make it clear, I don't identify as a black minority in the ethnic group. And the reason being, I think, we use the term black politically, because we embrace people with dark skin within the group, and we don't use the word minority because, black people, we're everywhere. We're not a minority. We might be a minority on this rock, but we're not a minority. In fact, we're a majority. And we don't use the word ethnic, because obviously ethnic is like, well, I'm a heathen, I haven't got any principles, I'm an animal. I've got principles, I've got morals, and I just thought, I just had to bring that to the table, because, thank you.
I think it might also be interesting, because you were talking about preferring the word trans.
Okay.
So maybe talk to us a bit about that.
Okay, I'm terrible. I've got another thing about that. I think I identify as trans, because a lot of people will use words like transsexual and transgender to describe trans people. And some trans people, they're cool with that. They'll use the term transsexual and transgender, or they'll use another term of trans history. I'm going to explain what all that is, because I've been asking, so I'll break it down. I think transsexual, when the person, when I first heard that word transsexual, I said to myself, well, I'm not changing my sex. That's the first thing I said. But doctor said, well, transsexual, because you're going to have an operation, you're going to change your sex. So I don't use that word because it has other connotations to it, as if I'm changing my sex. And I'm not doing that. Yeah. And then another term, this came from across the our cousins over there, across that pond in America, and it came up with this term called transgender. And I'm not changing my gender either, so I don't like that term. Yeah, so trans is like when you transition from one to something else. So I don't use that term. But there are other trans people that do use that term, so this is just the terms that I use. I don't use it, and the majority don't use it. It's not offensive. It's not offensive at all, it's just inaccurate. Yeah, so most trans people will use the term trans. In other words, because we do change our physical appearance, and we do. Yeah, we go on hormones and we change our physical appearance because it ends the dysphoria. It's another term, gender dysphoria. That's what trans people have. But that's because we're unhappy with our appearance. That is because we're actually born. And 10 years ago, this is a proven fact now, so it's not debatable. It's not, well, I don't believe you, fine, you don't have to believe this. But this is medical fact. Yeah, we're born like with, for example, as explained to one guy earlier, I'm what's known as a male to female trans person. So in other words, I was born with a female brain structure, fully developed female brain structure, and genetically male. But I'm a bit more complex than most trans people because I was actually born with undescending testicles as well, so I've got a bit intersex. We won't go into all that, it's even more complicated. But we just stick to the trans stuff, yeah? So, yeah, and that's basically what a trans person is. So you have your brain structure is not the same as your genetic structure, and that's all it is. You get some people say, well, yeah, I find it offensive, but most people are not aware, so I won't take offense, but I don't actually like it. Well, I was born a boy, but I want to actually become a woman. That was like a way of explaining it, and the way the government explains it, and the way he's always explaining it, and the way non-trans people explain it, and the way a lot of trans people who haven't actually studied look into these things explain it as well. But it's totally inaccurate because if you've got a female brain structure, you're genetically male, then he was born that way, so he wasn't ever male, he wasn't ever female, and that is a trans person. I also use another term as well when I'm actually writing my name. Don't like it, that thought it was my paper, it's not. I actually use another thing, I always put a silent T before M as well. But again, it's political, because a lot of trans people were taught back in the 70s and 80s and 90s and noughties. After you had the operation, in other words, gender being silent, the same way to describe it. After you had surgery, what you do, you go into the world and you disappear. You become just like everybody else. You become what's known as of trans history. And for the last 30 years or so, that's fine. But I think in this country it's a bit more progressive than a lot of other countries because they're killing us right now. But in this country, we get beat up and stuff as well. We do get killed as well, but not on a prolific scale. There's laws in this country that do protect us. Now, we are a protected characteristic, so if people, want to be abusive and so forth, well, we can get you arrested for doing that. So, people need to be mindful of that. Yeah, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell. That is what trans is. But I use the silent T because I like to, I'm out. I'm a trans person. I walk around just like anybody else does. I do my thing. I keep away from the press because those people, they never do anything right. They always deliberately write wrong things. There's an article in, I think it was in Metro not too long ago, where they had the young girl, used to be a boy, the youngest ever trans. But listen, if you're born trans, how can you be the youngest ever trans person? That's madness. But they write it and people get away with it and people read it. You have those actors on the television, they always put caricatures, I like to call them, Little Britain. Do you know what I mean? They like to really make fun of us, and it's okay. Because we chose to live that way, it's fine. Do you know what I mean? And I think I've been there before. We're growing up in the 70s. I'm from Brixton. I grew up in the 70s. I've been there before, being black. It was hard. It still is kind of difficult in some certain ways, but I'm getting it all over again as a trans person. It's like, flipping, leave me alone. So that's basically what I mean by what I mean by trans. You will not hear me or at my group. Christina, she's not here today. She was due to come here as well. She used the term trans as well. And like I said, if you're not sure, you do come across a trans person. You might not know. Sometimes you might do. They're not going to rip your head off if you say, "How do you identify?" But please, don't. If you're not sure, don't just start saying, "Oh, sir, Mr. or Miss," or "Madam." Don't do that. It's very offensive. Do you know what I mean? If you're not sure, just ask. Because we ask amongst ourselves all the time. I've met trans people. That's why I have to say, how do you identify? Do you know what I mean? So it's just the way it is.
Thank you. Thanks. One more question from the audience, and then we're going to invite two questions from the Okay, 2 more questions, and then there will be some complimentary drinks and live music performance.
Hi, my question was really about the transgender that you've just been talking about, or, you know, the whole topic. And one thing that interests me is the way you spoke is that you identify with both stereotypes, or not stereotypes, but both what we would call masculine and what we would call feminine as well. But I think when you were talking about purple, making purple out of pink and blue, I don't know if I was wrong there, but it seemed like you welcome in both aspects in yourself, and you don't feel like you have to choose. Did I get that right? Or should I move on to the next bit of the question first? I suppose what interests me is if we're saying that in all the questions that we've asked today, we're talking about maybe coming to a point where whether you're being feminine or masculine in your art practice or in your life and your way of being in the world is no longer going to perhaps be such a question to ask anymore. You know, in a sense, we all want to transcend that to some degree whilst still respecting it on another level too. You know, it's almost like we're all kind of going, well, I don't mind being feminine, but I actually would want to transgress it as well. And so I think perhaps we're in this middle space where we're trying to do the both things. And I suppose what interests me is if a person does feel that they have both sexualities, or I'm not sure what the right terminology is, women, well not sexualities, but both identifications with both the masculine and the feminine. And we're trying to reach a point where it doesn't matter, it's who you are as an individual person, and you can identify as much or as little with each. I find it fascinating having an operation and to change, and I suppose it's a sensitive subject that I'm bringing up here, but I wonder if we can just accept that we are not the stereotype of one or the other, whether perhaps you see that having an operation would be something that people get past as well, or whether it's trying to identify with one sex over another, and whether that's always going to be the case. I'm interested in that.
Can I ask you a question before?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot there.
Yeah.
So before I forget, so can I just ask you to do it like?
Yeah.
And then,
yeah, beautiful. I think the thing that I really, I think I've kind of answered your question already. And firstly, I think being trans, I don't think in the same way you think. As a cisgender person, please, if I'm being presumptuous, just tell me to be quiet, because I'm not cis. But as a cis person, what I mean by cis is 2 parts on the same plane. So in other words, female brain structure and genetically female. That's who you are. Yeah. I don't think like that because I've never been able to think like that. So that concept to me of being, should we just use mono for a description of that? That concept of mono thinking is not part of my psyche, and that's the part of my dysphoria which gives me stress. Yeah, because I don't think that way. I think in a dual way of thinking. I don't see myself as male or female. I'm trans. And the male and female aspects of being trans is what makes a trans person. So it's not a question of me saying, well, I'm now female. I'm both. I'm a combination of both, but I don't identify as both. I identify as female because I'm a female trans person. Are you with me? Yeah. But I still have masculine traits about me because I'm genetically male as well. So that is going to be a part of me. You know, the body thinks, the body does things for itself. And because there's 2 parts to me, in the sense of, you know, the female brain structure and that genetically male being, there's conflict there. And what doesn't help, yeah, a trans person going through life is the fact that I'm not allowed to be a trans person. It's beautiful, I can sit in a room and I can speak now and everyone's listening, yeah, but legally I can't be a trans person. I'm not allowed to be who I am. It would be beautiful if we could all transcend. But where I am now, in this point of my life, in this time, in this period, in this country where I live, I can't speak about another country, I don't live there, I live here. yeah, I can't be myself. Like I was explaining in the talk, we have to approach a gender recognition panel. We have to live in role. Here's a joke. We have to live like, in my case, I have to live as a woman for 2 years before I can even think about having an operation. Yeah, and before I can even get a certificate that says I am who I am. And even after that 2-year period, I may have had the operation, and I've done everything. I've done absolutely everything they've asked me to do. They give me a piece of paper that doesn't acknowledge me, because now, yeah, they're saying I'm a woman now. So before, they're forcibly imposing upon me this male gender, and now they give me a piece of paper. They say, listen, you can have rights. You can have rights. You can do this, and no one can't do it. And they give me this piece of paper, and they say, you know what? Now you're a woman. But what I'm saying to the government is, I am a trans person.
But I suppose my question is, are you saying that when you have an operation?
Yes, because the point I'm trying to...
What was it?
The point I'm trying to
What is
make...
it about not having an operation? I'm just interested.
Yeah,
what is it about not having an operation that would be satisfactory for you or the person?
I think what needs to be understood here is that what makes a trans person is this female brain structure. What drives your brain structure, the amount of neurons in your brain, yeah, that determines your expression, yeah. So different trans people have different amounts of neurons and different expression. So for some trans people, the need, yeah, the level of dysphoria, yeah, is not as great, so they don't need to have an operation, yeah. Others, the level is much higher, so they will need the operation. Long before the 70s, I know people have always said, well, this is when we had the first. Throughout history, trans people have existed. Yeah, from the beginning of time. They even found that, I don't like to use that term, but I don't know any other term to call it, a cave person. Yeah, who was trans. It's not something that's just popped up out of my figment of imagination. Yeah, it's real time. Yeah, but if you've got a whole world that is saying to you, you don't exist, adding to the dysphoria that you have anyway, on top of that, yeah, you've got problems. And being black on top of that, that is why I set up a black trans group. Because when you go into the trans community as a black person, they don't want it. And you know, we all know the story of a person that's been oppressed. Yeah, who's not, they can really oppress. Yeah? Because, so, you know, where do we go? Yeah, and everybody wants us to fit into these boxes. But I'm saying, I'm not into that. I don't care what the doctors and psychologists, I don't care. Medical fact says, female brain structure, genetically male, that's proven, fine. And that suits me. I'm a trans person. I don't owe nobody nothing. I don't care if people don't want to believe or register. But all I do when people ask me questions, I try to answer the questions as honestly and as clearly as possible. So,
thank you. We're just going to have one more question, and then we'll get you some wine and some music.
I just have a question for Benjamin. You alluded earlier that most of the problems facing women are down to male instinct of aggression and need for power, about most of the problems facing the world. But also you mentioned earlier that your former girlfriend said that she admired you more when you were more manly, more aggressive. What do you think going forwards men need to do? You need to lose somehow that instinct towards aggression and power? Or do we need to just accept that's an innate a part of our biological structure we can't get rid of, and just find ways of redirecting, remanifesting that instinct that we can't lose?
Well, I think if it was a part of that kind of biological structure, then we have to work hard to deal with it. You know, I think there are a lot of things which may feel like, or seem at the time like they're part of our biological structure, like hunting, gathering, and all kinds of things. But we change it. I know that within the community that I come from, I mean, it's difficult for me to say that now because I now live in a field in Lincolnshire, in the middle of nowhere, and you know, my neighbours are farmers and people like that. But certainly within the black community, I found there's this thing about a lack of confidence in black men to be a man in any other way. So, there was a time a few years ago when a lot of Jamaican singers, not just Jamaican, but quite a few Jamaican singers, were doing a lot of anti-gay stuff. And I wrote an article in a newspaper, and as always with these things, you get well accepted in some places, but in other places, it said, oh, he must be gay. As if, to support women's rights, you have to be a woman, and to support gay rights, you have to be gay. And what I've found is, because I've been able to mix with some of these people who make these records. I found that when I speak to them and say, look, if you say, because a lot of them quote the Bible, and a lot of them, if you listen to their music, they keep talking about equal rights and justice. It's all over the music. If you say to them, there's a kind of macho stance that they put up. And what I've said to them, it's interesting, I've seen people change in front of me, but just to say, let's just say you don't agree with being gay. You can't have that point of view. You can't. I mean, let's just say that you think it's unnatural. I mean, lots of heterosexual people do things to each other that are unnatural, right? It doesn't mean, because you say, well, I'm going to, in the community you say louder, I'm going to leave them alone and just get on with my life, that I am one of them. Somehow it's seen as a weakness, even the slightest bit of support. I remember being in Jamaica in 1986, when the Jamaican Gay Liberation Front, let me tell you something, in 1986 there was no such organisation, but somebody appeared and said they were the Jamaican Gay Liberation Front, and they organised a march through Kingston. It was just somebody, I don't know, testing the water, somebody wanted to illustrate something. Factories closed, people stood in front of the churches with choppers, waiting for these Jamaican gays, because they say there's not such thing. And if you talk to these people, they say, this man, they do the usual thing, Adam and Eve, Adam and Steve, blah, blah, blah. And so we've got to find a new way of being men. I'm not sure how to, the thing is, if I talk about how to do it at a governmental level, then I'm kind of going to sound like I'm kind of doing Labour, Katoria, I'm not into that. I'm about the grassroots. That's why I said I've turned to Anglicanism in a way. Because I think you have to persuade people on the grassroots level. You can change the law. There's laws against eating gay people, transsexual people, but people still do. People want to feel confident. People don't want to be bullied at school. I play football with some kids. The other day, somebody didn't get the ball. Said, it's bloody gay. I said, hold on, what do you mean by gay? He wasn't fast enough, he wasn't powerful enough. And so we called him gay. And so it really started, we have to redefine ourselves. Once, when Clause 28, this thing was happening, how many years ago, there was this thing called Clause 28, which was about stopping the promotion of homosexuality in schools. When the campaign asked me if I would be the face of it in the Voice newspaper, and I said, yeah, no problem. I was the face of it. And then somebody was interviewing me and said, oh, so you're gay, are you? Because you're supporting these people. I said, well, no. I mean, this was an interview, in the middle of the interview. And for some reason, I just went, I'm bisexual. Right? A couple of weeks later, somebody else interviewed me and said, oh, and this was on television actually. Somebody else said, if you're bisexual, have you slept with any of your poets? And I just said, look, I'm fed up with this. Can't you live with this? In fact, they said, why did you say you were bisexual before? And I said, listen, I am sexual. Full stop. There's nothing before it, and there's nothing after it. I'm sexual. They said, why didn't you say you're bisexual? I said, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. You know, and if I do something slightly gay or slightly bi in the future, you come back and go, you hypocrite, in 1994 you said straight. You know, it really goes back to what I said before about non-masculine, non-feminine. I mean, there are some things, physically, of course, that men and women can't do, etc., etc. But that's got nothing to do with equality. But for me, it really is about, I'm talking about the community I know best, you know, and I see some issues within the white community, I think, that long term, which may be slightly different. I went on television once and spoke about being infertile, I kind of twist. And I won't call his name, but a very well-known black poet, Paul Milton, he should be ashamed of himself. Black people shouldn't talk about those things in public. And let me tell you, this person is known as a revolutionary in the freedom fight. That's what he says to me. Because that is not what being a black man is, in their eyes. We have a lot of work to do in our community.